Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing with our overview videos with a quick look at the Necrons, one of the favourite races in recent times from the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Now, the Necrons are actually a race of mechanical-like warriors created from the minds of the Necrontyr, an ancient race that predates human evolution by millions of years, rising to power even before the Elder roughly 60 million years ago. They were also contemporaries of the Old Ones, which were the first and most powerful interstellar civilization seen in the early days of the Milky Way. Now, the Necrons have lain dormant in stasis tombs for many millions of years, and are beginning to reawaken, seeking to establish the supremacy of the Necron dynasties once more. Now, a history of the Necrontyr which led up to the creation of the Necrons. The Necrontyr came from a homeworld that was barren and radiation blasted. It was incredibly hostile to almost all life, indicating that originally it had been verdant but had changed in some way to become radioactive. Now, their physical bodies were twisted and damaged by the radiation put out by their star, and their psyche was consumed by a collective fear of the pain they endured before their rapid and inevitable demise. Their culture came to revolve around death, with their cities becoming little more than vast tomb complexes, with a few temporary homes for the living before they became another tomb to add to the complex. They did survive long enough to develop very advanced science with the aim of extending their lives, but concluded that their bodies were so badly damaged by their star that they could not defeat the radiation taint of their home system with the resources they had to hand. Thus they developed space travel and met the Old Ones, a fellow star-travelling race but the polar opposite of the frail and sickly Necrontyr, strong in body and advanced in power, able to move across space in an eye blink, where the Necrontyr relied on vast stasis ships to get them between stars. This of course changed over the millennia, but in the beginning they were still quite slow when they spread across space. Now eventually the Necrontyr formed an empire and grew strong in the depths of space away from their star, although they were still a stunted and short-lived people. However, their great empire grew ever wider and more diverse, and the unity that had made them strong in the beginning was eroded, and bitter rebellions known as the First Wars of Succession erupted, as entire realms fought for independence. The Triarch, the ruling council of the Necrontyr, realised that only the threat of an external enemy would bring unity to the Necrontyr once more. Inevitably, the Triarch levelled the ill will of their people on the physically and culturally superior Old Ones, fueling the fires of jealousy and rage in the people. They turned their advanced technology and resources into tools to be used for destroying the Old Ones, and began what became known as the War in Heaven, probably the basis of the War in Heaven, which is an Elder legend. However, as advanced as the Necrontyr were, they paled in comparison to the Old Ones, whose mastery of the warp granted them such power that they could be considered gods in their own right. Eventually, the Necrontyr were pushed back into the area that would become known as the Halo Stars in the modern galaxy, and became an annoyance to be ignored by the Old Ones, whilst the Necrontyr's jealousy of the Old Ones' power became a hatred for all other life. On the verge of total defeat, the unity of the Necrontyr began to fracture again, and the Second Wars of Succession began. The Triarchs desperately sought for a solution and eventually found one in discovering the Catan, or Star Gods, later known as the Yinga in the Elder tongue. Now, the Catan were insubstantial energy beings who were drawn to the Necrontyr for their immense hatred of the Old Ones. To communicate, the Necrontyr had to forge bodies of living metal for the Catan, the same metal that coated their starships. The Catan known as the Deceiver came before Cazark, the Silent King and Lord of the Triarch, in a new body forged from living metal. It told the king that its race also hated the Old Ones, and by allowing the Catan to transfer the minds of the Necrontyr into shells of living metal, then the Catan could join with them in a war to defeat the Old Ones. The idea of shedding their weak and inferior bodies was greatly appealing to the Necrontyr people, and so the Silent King agreed, constructing legions of metallic bodies for his people. Then the Catan used their power to literally rip the minds of the Necrontyr from their bodies and place them in living metal shells, feeding on the vast life energy that was let loose from the death of all these bodies as the minds were stripped from them. However, too late the Silent King realised that his race had sold their souls and a chance for true advancement to the Catan as a price for defeating death. The Necrontyr were reduced to obedient, dull creatures serving the Catan, with only a few retaining enough intelligence or free will to act on their own. Thus, the Necrontyr as a race became extinct, and the Necrons were born. The combined Catan and Necron forces pushed back the Old Ones to an almost complete extinction, even taking the battle to the Webway, the warp tunnels that allowed the Old Ones to travel so quickly throughout the galaxy, fighting for control of this precious resource. The Old Ones were eventually reduced to a handful of worlds, besieged at every turn. They created and armed lesser races such as the Eldar and the Croc, which were the forerunners of the Orc, to fight and defend them. But ultimately, the fury of the Catan and their undying legions proved too strong. Eventually, the Old Ones went too far trying to defend themselves, creating the first proto-warp entities that became the Enslavers. The Enslavers then multiplied, invading the galaxy and destroying the Old Ones as surely as any Necron assault would have, their psychic power being leached and their bodies being destroyed, thus ending the empire of the Old Ones altogether. Now, throughout the final stages of the War in Heaven, the Silent King bided his time, and when it was right, he struck, leading the Necrons in rebellion, and using weapons powered by the very universe itself to shatter the undying Catan into shards, weakening them to the point where they could no longer lead or control the Necron race, and sending them away in protected crypts at locations across the galaxy. However, it was not a time for celebration for the Necrons. The galaxy was in ruin, and the Eldar were now the most powerful race in the galaxy, once the Catan were brought down, and the Necrons being badly weakened by this coup against their gods. So the Silent King ordered their cities to become vast stasis tombs, to endure 60 million years, when the time of flesh was old and rotten through existence, and the undying Necrons could rise again to take their rightful place as the galaxy's true masters. This hibernation was known as the Great Sleep and continued until relatively recently. Many tomb worlds fell victim to the ravages of time, suffering malfunctions, natural disasters, and the Eldar. Many tomb worlds fell and were destroyed. However, many more survived. Some of the earliest awoke to actually see the Great Crusade itself, but most have now only risen in the last 1,000 years, and the official contact with the Imperium only being made in the year 897 of Millennium 41, although at this point billions of Necrons were likely to have been awake across the galaxy. However, it is estimated there are still billions of Necrons still in stasis, awaiting the right time to rise and take back their fallen empire. Now, a little bit more about the bodies of the Necrons themselves. Now, these bodies, as I mentioned, are made of living metal and appear skeletal, appearing to have no flesh on them, only bone, and having skull-like faces which can unnerve even the steadiest of guardsmen. Their bodies seem to be infused with strange energies, and their eyes are pools of the self-same green glowing energy. All Necrons can heal an incredible amount of damage with the properties of their living metal bodies, but should the damage prove too severe, then the Necron will phase out, their minds and bodies being teleported to the nearest tomb complex where they will remain in storage until either repairs are made or a new body is forged. However, repeatedly phasing out damages the Necron's memory and thought engrams, the mechanical vestiges of the former Necron tier's mind, eventually reducing the once intelligent creature to a little more than a complex automata with no real free will and no ability to think for itself beyond the orders it is given. Now, the Necron society itself is hierarchical. The highest Necrons are the Pharaons, the rulers of entire dynasties, which comprise of many tomb worlds across the galaxy. Beneath these are the Overlords, who ruled clusters of tomb worlds, and still control a vast force within the Pharaons' domain. Beneath the Overlords are the Lords. Each Lord oversees a tomb world and keeps it safe from the enemies and natural disasters that could assail it at any time. All Pharaons and Overlords are served by a royal court of Necron lords and cryptechs, who are essentially scientists who study the sciences of the Necron race, which are slightly different than the sciences of other races due to what they studied in life as the Necron tier. In combat, the Necrons are an unflinching legion of metal bodies. They wield Gauss weaponry, energy weapons that strip the target's molecules one layer at a time in extremely rapid succession, then attract the layers towards the gun, literally ripping the enemy apart and flaying them alive. And this can be effective regardless of their armour or biology, thus meaning the weapons are incredibly effective across a wide spectrum of enemies. These Gauss weapons can be built in a variety of shape and sizes depending on the requirement of the technology. They do also use more specialist equipment, but I'll go through this in the Necrons equipment video later on. So that's everything I wanted to mention on the Necrons today, a fallen race who now live as essentially shadows of their former selves. If there's anything you think I've missed or anything you want to add, you can leave it in the comments section below, or if you want to ask a question, of course you can ask it there, or go to the Vox Relay, the Vaults of Terra forum, where you'll be able to find a group of knowledgeable individuals where you can ask questions or interact with the Vaults of Terra community. If you have any questions specifically for me, you can send me a personal message either at the Vox Relay or here on YouTube. So that's everything I wanted to mention today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.